Greetings, everyone, and welcome to the Pan Future Society podcast. I am your host, Sean, as always, and today is Saturday, May 27th, 2017. I am just back a few days ago from a 4-day camping trip. Had a great time, saw lots of cool stuff, and did a little thinking, did a little bit of the show for this week from a redwood park, and I'll have that coming up. And as a result, I also didn't have a lot of time to research a big topic for this week, so the main segment this week is going to be sort of an essay on things. And before we get to that, I will do a couple of quick news bits. This week there was tons of space news, and I actually think I will do a whole bunch of space news next week, just to catch up on everything that happened. But if, among other things, if you haven't seen it, go to nasa.gov or wherever you get your space news and find the new images of Jupiter from the Juno mission. They're quite stunning. And now on with other news things. Goodbye smokestacks. The headline from Science magazine. A startup in Houston has created a zero-emission fossil fuel power plant. Now, to some extent, you don't want to... We want to stop burning fossil fuels. Just at some point, you have to say, leave it in the ground. But if you're going to do it, there are better ways to do it. This plant is a 25-megawatt plant. And where is the company name? Net Power, the startup that is building this plant. They burn natural gas in pure oxygen, and the result is almost pure CO2, which then they capture all of it, which can either be stored underground or used in other industrial processes or sequestered one way or the other. So it is entirely possible to, if you have to, burn fossil fuels, capture all of the CO2 so it doesn't just go spewing into the atmosphere. So that is good news for Houston and for the planet. And the second news item I want to mention this week: scientists have 3D printed ovaries and use them in mice. They did this process of 3D printing these organs and actually successfully made mice fertile, and these mice had mice babies. So this is 3D printing organs is not entirely new, and there's usually some sort of scaffolding and that they use, and they grow the cells for whatever organ it is onto the scaffolding. They've done this with heart tissue and skin and various other things. This research is primarily aimed at, for example, women who had childhood cancer or may otherwise not have been able to have children due to this illness. If they are able to cryopreserve an ovary prior to treatment, and then scientists could use that genetic material to make new ovaries later in life. So that is pretty fascinating. Not only that they did this with this particular organ, every organ has its own challenges, so every time you can 3D print a new one, that's just another step forward. And what is fascinating, too, is that it works the way it's supposed to. It does what it's supposed to. The ovaries produce egg cells, and off you go. Of course, any study that was done in mice does not automatically transfer to people, but this is certainly a big step forward in this case. And that will be the news of the moment for this week. As I mentioned, I am just back from a road trip. I spent 4 days camping in central and coastal California, and aside from having less time for research this week for a regular show, the trip was also time to think, and I'm going to share some thoughts and ramblings today on a few things, mostly related to long-term thinking and civilization. Also mostly written off the top of my head, so here we go. The first thing I want to share with you is something I recorded in Humboldt Redwoods State Park, some thoughts I had while sitting in a campsite beneath the gigantic coastal redwood trees. Greetings, everyone, and welcome to this very special edition report from the Pan Future Society podcast, broadcasting to you on, it is Monday, May 22nd, 2017, and I am currently in Humboldt Redwoods State Park in California, USA. I've been on a road trip for a couple of days, met up with a good friend of mine, Tim. I've known Tim for almost forever, and decided it was a good time to get away for a few days and hang out in the wilderness and do camping type stuff. And being in the redwoods, again, I've been to several different redwood parks, and I'm just into trees in general, but redwoods in particular, and the giant sequoias. There's something unfathomable about these trees. I take pictures of them, I shoot video of them, and you really don't get the sense, the scope of these and how immense they are. And it's often discussed, when you see them, you're looking at trees that are 100 feet, 200 feet tall, and that's hard to wrap your head around by itself. But then, if you take a few more moments and get a little philosophical with yourself and start to think about how old these trees are. There are trees around me right now that are 500 years old, 1,000 years old maybe. The biggest ones in the park. I'm not in the area of the park with the biggest trees right now, but there are some here that are definitely 1,000 years old. And that is really quite something to wrap your head around, too. As I've talked about on the show many times, kind of the whole point of the show, long-term thinking. In terms of, the passage of time, I am no more significant to one of these trees than an ant is to me or a squirrel. 1,000 years, what is that? What is a human generation is what, 40 years? And 1,000 years is over 20 generations. Think back, if a tree is 1,000 years old, what was society like? What was civilization like 1,000 years ago? For all the advancements we have, for all the technology, I'm recording this on my cell phone with a fancy little Shure MV88 microphone. But it wasn't that long ago that we were living in woods like this, hunting and gathering. And to make sure that we're still here in 1,000 years from now to wonder what life was like when I lived it, we need some real long-term thinking. Think like a tree, think like a mountain. What can you do in your life to make sure that society and civilization continues, that life continues? It's hard for me to kind of articulate thoughts like this when I have them, because I don't want to get all hippy-dippy on you. I don't want to go, ooh, peace and love, man. That's too shallow. That is way too shallow. My parents were hippies, and for all the things that generation did for peace, it fell short. I'm sorry, Mom, Dad, it fell short. And we need more than just the desire for peace and the desire for sustainability. We need to actually do it. And going backwards is not the way to do it. I know there are a lot of people who just want to go be farmers, You can't be a subsistence farmer for 7 billion people. It's impossible. At this point, the way through is forward. And we should do everything that we can to pressure our leaders, our politicians, to keep going forward, not backward, not sideways, not for us and not them, not for them and not us, for everybody. Some people think it's too overblown to say technology can save us, and in the immediate term, no, it won't. But science always moves forward in small steps, and it stumbles and it stops and it backtracks and tries again. We can't stop doing that, and we have to keep trying and trying to undo what we've done just by unraveling the wheel of time back to the 17th century or something is not the way to do it. I am going to hope very much that I can come to this forest again and look at these 1,000-year-old trees that are 150 feet tall when I'm an old man and I can putter here in my flying electric car or something like that. And we can have it both ways. I really have to hold on to the hope that we can have the high tech and we can have the clean, safe planet. We just need to push through the bad technology that we didn't realize was bad when it was made. And I'm just rambling now, so. But thanks for hanging out on my little road trip stop in the great outdoors among the giants of the earth. And I will talk to you again in the future. There's the live report from Humboldt Redwoods State Park in California. On with further thoughts. Don't be afraid to say, I don't know. That just means there's more to learn. And don't fall into the trap of plugging assumptions into the empty spaces. Learn to live with those empty spaces. Not everything is known right now, but that doesn't mean you have to fill the gap with wild guesses or something, or think that something is forever unknowable. We will get there someday. Fear drives so much reaction in the world. Fear might be the first emotion. It's essential to survival, fight or flight, anger or fear, but that's not how civilization should work. One purpose of civilization is to support our attempts to be more than the animals we are. Civilization is the ability to choose not to do what our instinct would have us do. Civilization is separating thought from action, feeling fear but not running, feeling anger but not lashing out, feeling hate but taking time to slow down and get to the root of the feeling, taking the time to learn more, and realizing the hate is unjustified. Civilization is realizing that our similarities and our common goals are far more important than whatever makes us different. There's a great video I found that I will link to Thomas Thwaites in a TED Talk describing his attempt to make Pop-Tarts from scratch. And I mean really from scratch, smelting metal and getting plastic from oil to build a toaster. I'll also link to a Long Now Foundation page with the video and some other interesting comments about building civilization from scratch. Long Now board member Kevin Kelly said this: a technology such as the mouse is made up of hundreds of technologies, and they themselves are requiring hundreds of other technologies to support it. These technologies form networks in the sense that they are all self-supporting. To make a saw, you need a hammer to hammer the saw blade. To have a hammer, you need a saw to cut the wood. The more complex the technology, the more self-supporting and self-dependent it is. You might think of any complex invention as a network of dependent and self-sustaining different technologies. So the takeaway for me from that is, although we are advanced in our use of technology, everything is built on a long chain of technologies, sometimes stretching back far into the past. You can't get a computer without figuring out how to make plastic and electricity. You can't even have a kitchen knife without having started with stone tools. It has been said that any society is 3 meals from revolution. I've heard variations on that phrase that make it 9 meals or whatever, but it's close. We understand so little about how our own society works. This is something Carl Sagan lamented 20 years ago, and it's worse now. We are woefully unprepared for large-scale change, and that is a failure of long-term thinking. A disaster such as a comet strike could send us back 2,000 years or more. Maybe technology that survives can be kept working for a while, but after a generation or two, we're back to the Stone Age, or maybe the Iron Age. The Long Now Foundation has another project that you should check out, and I will link to it in the notes, the Manual for Civilization. This is a collection that will eventually house about 3,000 books deemed necessary for rebuilding a civilization after disaster. These books are a mix of subjects as well, as showing an understanding that civilization is more than just the stuff we make. They are bringing together books on mechanics and technology, on culture like Shakespeare, certain science fiction works, such as those that may inspire thoughts about what the future could be, or perhaps warnings, and works on futurism and long-term thinking, which would also include an understanding of the past. It would be an enormous undertaking to rebuild civilization. Much better would be to encourage and engage in long-term thinking so that at least some disasters can be avoided before they reach crisis stages. All right, that is your show for the week. Thank you, as always, for joining me here. I hope you enjoyed my meandering musings on topics of long-term thinking and civilization today. Drop me a note. Go to the website, panfuture.org. Email Sean or info or whatever you want to type at panfuture.org. Also from the Pan Future website, you can find links to the Facebook and Twitter pages. I do quite a bit on Twitter, so that's the more active social media place to find me. Write a review on iTunes or Stitcher. That helps enormously. If you like the show, share it with your friends. Write those reviews. That's just very helpful to get the word out, to get some ratings on iTunes there. And I hope you are having a good time wherever you are. It's a holiday weekend here in the United States, so a few extra days to, do chores around the house, I suppose. And the thing about holidays, I'm an introvert, and I kind of stay away from people sometimes, so holidays are kind of, extra days for me to sit around and read books. I don't want to go out there with all those people. And anyway, if you are out and about, drive safe, fly safe, stay safe, and I will talk to you again in the future.